You're still going, right?
Yes.
You feel energized.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm really tired, but I'm learning to rest.
Yeah, yeah, you have to have balance
Yes.
in everything in life, truthful. And Brian, when did you first, sort of get the idea that this would make a great film? But not just a film, a document, but also, a way to really capture the movement and capture the people behind the movement. When did that sort of come together for you?
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
There were a lot of interesting checkpoints along the way. The first one was I met some Lakota elders, and they said some really wise words, and I was like, oh dang, like their wisdom. And they were the ones that told me, like, oh, you're a filmmaker, you want to do a documentary about something else that I told them about? Like, do you know about fracking? We really need a documentary about fracking. And I said, I got this other idea, but I'll hear you out,
Right.
And then that was one. Then when I met Patricia on literally like one of the first days of filming, I was like, oh, okay, this is like potent, And then behind that scene, or the whole part of the story where I got sued, was really the threshold, because the oil and gas company that was suing me, they let everybody else go. And they said, oh, you're the filmmaker with the footage. Actually, if you just give us that footage, then you can get out of the lawsuit. And I was like, oh, you really like this footage? It sounds really valuable, actually. It sounds like I should make a documentary about it. So, and that was the 8th day of me filming. Like, I was literally just like showing up to things, and I got a call that was like, hey, I'm going to lock myself to this bulldozer. Do you want to come and film it? And I said, of course.
Wow.
And so I filmed it, and I got sued, and then I was like, now I guess I'm in. And now I guess and I mean, even though I kept the footage. Yeah, and that line between activism and journalist was like something I really had to figure out. So that was that.
Right. Speaking of footage, obviously you've covered a lot of years here. I mean, this has been going a long time. I would imagine you have hundreds of hours of footage. In making the film, though, what were your sort of guiding points? I mean, did you have any inspirations from other filmmakers, or how did you kind of construct the film? Because most documentarians that I've ever interviewed always say the movie is found in the editing room. When you're dealing with all your materials and interviews and things like that. I mean, how did the structure come together?
Yeah, it's a fascinating art form because of that. It needs to be true to life. It needs to be like have journalistic integrity, and it needs to be entertaining. And it's incredibly challenging. I had a great creative producer named Doug Blush, who was like an Oscar winner. That
Yes, I know Doug. Yeah. His work.
Yeah, and Tony Hales, another consultant who we worked with, and amazing advice. So it was just a lot of really good advice. And then this other book called what's it called? Story by Robert McKee, which is a screenwriter's kind of handbook. Mm-hmm. But that's what I had to do, is like I had to like kind of erase everything that I knew I had. And it's like, if this was a narrative movie to be really like entertaining, like what would be the shots? Because that gave me a sense of like making it more cinematic and structural, because the first edit of this was like 2.5 hours. And the people that I made sit through it, they were like, Brian, when's this movie over? And I was like, just one more hour. Because like real life is not the 3-act structure. But,
that's true.
So I really had to force it into the structure.
Yeah. So Patricia, a lot of times when subjects, in the case of this film, a subject, yourself, are approached about being in a film, a lot of times there's reluctance. Did you ever have any reluctance about being a part of this film? Or was it like, I think this is a great idea, I'm going to be a part of this?
I don't know if I've ever told Brian this, but I didn't really trust him until after we turned in the signatures. Mm-hmm. I was just, I feel like there were a lot of organizations and a lot of different people approaching me because my story is a good fundraising tool. I'm an impacted citizen. I'm a mom. We're going against the state. It's a great story, and it can make money. So with Brian, like I said, it took me a while to trust him. But then afterwards, we saw his commitment and dedication to the work. And then ever since then, it's just been honestly picking and choosing which organizations we want to work with.
Right, right. Well, obviously the people in the film are exposing themselves. They have to be vulnerable, and who knows what the repercussions will be. Whether the oil and gas industry suing, that's one aspect of it. But there's all other aspects of putting yourself out there, in a documentary. So I commend you for your bravery for that and commitment to the movement. So. Questions. I'm sure there's some questions for Brian and Patricia. Any want to jump up? Yeah, go ahead.
Brian, you did a great role in bringing this other character that is seen by oil and gas company and the environmentalist, which is fear. Immediately you start off with this person who's really just rattling off all these things, but really what they're saying is, I'm scared you're going to take my job. I'm scared I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. And equally, we say, I'm scared you're going to work and cause my family to be in harm. And that fear is such a volatile emotion that whoever controls it can really manipulate the direction. But the thing that put the fear away is that when we collectively say we will unite in that fear, and we will say, I will hold my ground here, and I will go against the titan of oil and gas, and you will have to work for your votes. And Patricia, I'm so inspired. You are the person who put the fear away of I can do something. So thank you. But what was your fear?
In making the film?
Yeah,
I have so many. So where do I start? Yeah. The first big one was getting sued by the oil company, because at first I was like, they must be kidding. Let me just talk to somebody and get out of it, And then I realized I'm kind of in it right now. So that was a lot of fear at that moment, and that really, that is their tactic against the activists. You saw the way that they were harassing the signature collectors. There was a lot more harassment that didn't make it into the film, but people were being stalked to their homes. The people, there was a lot of paranoia, but a saying that I've heard is that it's not paranoia if it's rational. There was a lot of actual harassment happening. People were finding bullets on the top of their cars as a symbol of watch out. People were getting stalked, to their homes. So there was a lot of fear at play, and my fear was just one part of it. I started keeping my footage. I would back up my footage and keep it in a safety deposit box, because I was well, maybe they'll burn down my house. I don't know. They know where I live. Why wouldn't they burn down my house? I was very aware of that, and I was. We were all afraid of moles. Patricia said, a lot of people didn't trust me until until after this got turned in. I was following them for 8 months. And even still, they're well, we want to trust you, but you might be a mole. It's fair. And even still, I would meet with producers, and they were I'm interested in your story. In the back of my mind, I was maybe they're a mole. So the paranoia was so strong. The fear is really the tool. You really nailed it with that. So there's a lot to be afraid of. And that's kind of the thing. It's shedding the light on the fear. As we tell this story, as we put it out into the world, we have less to be afraid of, because more people know the truth. Yeah.
This gentleman first, and then the one after.
Some states like New York did pass
Here you have a
flag. New York did pass the ban, and sort of reluctantly, the governor was forced into it. And Senator Steingraber, she came and gave a talk to us about how to work in Colorado down at the legislature office. Anyway, what things can we do to help the community, and what can we learn from other states also, so that our community will win this next one?
You want to do this?
So one of the things that I learned from doctors, Steingraber, is that her name? Steingraber, when she came, was that in addition, they're benefiting from the benefits of not having fracking in New York, but now they're dealing with other issues. So they can't frack in New York, but they can bring in all the wastewater and all the waste material and bury it in New York. And so there's a whole different kind of slew of new issues. And I think it's also important to know, I really feel the oil and gas boom has like already subsided in Colorado. The amount of permits that are getting permitted has gone down dramatically at now the ECMC, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. In addition to that, I have friends whose kids are going to school. One of them wants to go to School of Mines, and they were told not to look at the petroleum program because by the time they'd finish school, the degree would be obsolete. And so it is great, but I mean, at this point now we have a whole new slate of experimental technologies. So we have carbon capture sequestration experimental wells happening in Pueblo and Yuma. We have, I think, 2 or 3 different deep geothermal projects that have been green-lighted. And so with those, there also come some challenges. For example, right now at the ECMC, I'm working on a rulemaking where they want to turn existing oil and gas wells into geothermal production for energy. And so the same people that are currently doing not the best job of regulating are going to regulate this new thing. And so at right now, what we are doing is making sure that the protections for communities are written into the new rules, because they want to exempt carbon capture, sequestration, and geothermal from things like cumulative impacts or financial assurances. So all the things that we've worked for to have and to hold the oil and gas companies accountable, all of these new industries are starting with none of that. And so it's our hope that we're able to press all these agencies to have good rules. And so there's a lot of rulemakings happening. We have the cumulative impacts rulemaking at ECMC, in addition to the geothermal rulemaking at the Air Quality Control Commission, which gives out the permits to pollute. We have a procedural rules rulemaking. In addition to that, they're talking about creating a credit trading program for the midstream sector. So think pipelines, trains, and trucks. This is going to focus specifically on fuel combusting equipment along the midstream. And so what they're proposing is that these operators that are able to reduce their emission and disproportionately impact communities will be able to generate credits. And with those credits, they will be able to, offset their emissions in other parts of the state. But they're not going to take into account the company's their compliance in other areas. So PDC Energy is one of the biggest midstream operators, and they're a big oil and gas company. And I think they're owned by Chevron now. But at this point in Colorado, they would be able to, reduce their emissions along the midstream, but they're still going to have hundreds of wells that have no air quality standards during pre-production. And they're not going to take into account their compliance on these other issues while they're still able to generate credits. So that's happening right now. All of these rulemakings are going to happen around August. Between August and November is when we'll see the majority of those rulemakings. So it's so important to be involved. There's a lot of organizations, 350, Green Latinos, Sierra Club. There's a lot of organizations that I work with, and a lot of us are trying to bring attention to that. So there's so much happening. I could be here all night.
Well, we do have another question here.
Thank you for the work that you've done and the work you're going to do in the future. I think we should all stop and say that. And since we're going to talk about the future, I just really wanted to find out, Brian, what do you think is next for you, just generally in this space? And if you thought of other ideas, because just throw this out. The fear thing is everywhere. When you looked at the political leadership, they feared the amount of control and power that the industry had because of how much benefit they created in our state. And it's sort of it's the elephant in the room. That's how a lot of what happened to those courageous women that did all this work and created this outcome. I'm curious to know, would you consider going up a layer and looking at how the United States does its regulatory processes, how there's a real problem in the U.S. as compared to other countries, where other countries often have regulators that really are in control of the street and not servicing them. And it's a really big deal in tons of industries in our country. Not that I'm lambasting anybody that's an attorney, but it's a reality. I just thought I'd throw that out there and ask you to talk for a moment about what your future plans are.
Thank you. Yeah. What's fascinating from my own journey is that I kind of fell into this story in 2018, and it took me 5 years to edit it. And since then, I've been going down deeper rabbit holes and stuff. Like, this film is not representative of what I think about now, or like what I think a film needs to be now. But these films take time, and things are changing so quickly. And so, what I am thinking about, I think about so much. I want to touch on the interpersonal, the kind of spiritual realm too, because I think that's a really important part. Like, it's not just a logistical question. It's like our whole society is going to have to transition to something. So it's going to take a lot, of interpersonal resilience, community building, in addition to different laws and technologies. But the other side of that is the way that we've basically grown. If you look at like human population on the planet, kind of like hockey sticks, right? It skyrockets right alongside with fossil fuels, coal, and then oil and gas. And it's like inescapable the way that we just you look around, literally everything is created with oil and gas. Like this theater, these lights, like everything is oil and gas. And so it's not as simple as regulating, because because it's a super complex issue, and oil and gas is going to run out at some point. Thinking 7 generations ahead, so like, what is life 200 years from now? I think that's the layer that I'm thinking of, and that's kind of bizarre to even contemplate. But how do we get there, and what do we need to do to stay sane and civil as a society if suddenly we don't have oil and gas? And so some people want to talk about nuclear or hydrogen, and like, fine. And ultimately, I think it's a bigger picture than just regulating individual emissions. Although emissions are very important at this step. So it's a lot of things. It's tomorrow, it's next week, it's next year, it's the next 10 years, etc. So I'm thinking about a lot of things and how to help people, individuals, and ultimately what I love about this medium and media in general is that it inspires individuals. You can put it on the internet. The internet is one of my favorite things, because it's like, we have instantaneous global communication. Like, that's kind of cool. Maybe we can use that to get out of this problem. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
You have a question here?
Hey Brian, hey Patricia. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm just piggybacking on what you've already said, Brian. I have seen all the people here, I work with them, and I've seen the big psychological, spiritual, emotional toll it has taken on all of you. And I just am so proud, so happy to see this body of work. And I want all the audience to know that this is a lot of sweat and blood. I don't think Brian has financially gained anything from it. It's lost money. And Patricia, I don't know if you want to share with people, the fracking is still going on in your son's
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and subscribe, like this video, and check out earthdogfilms.com for more exclusive content.